Hi, welcome to UNI.MINDS Festival, and thank you for choosing a sustainable and community-driven cities and villages parallel session. This event is organized by Knowledge and Technology Transfer Offices of the University of Maribor and University of Ljubljana in cooperation with our industry partners and supporters from the innovation community. Can you hear me?
We hear you now. We lost you for a second.
Okay, sorry. So the main partner of the festival is Novartis in Slovenia, and also this festival would not have been possible without the support of Republic of Slovenia and the European Union under the European Regional Development Fund. In this parallel session, we will give a snapshot of innovative projects and good collaborative practices in this field. Each speaker will have a 3-minute long presentation, followed by 3 minutes of Q&A. At the end, our moderator will encourage us to have an open dialogue on future development trends and how to join forces. Let's just briefly go over the technical stuff. I would ask you to change your view to gallery view side-by-side gallery. This way you will be able to see everybody a little bit better. And also you can rename yourself. How you do it, it's shown here in the picture. In case this is not your name, if it's a password, let's say, it also happens. Throughout the event, I encourage you to keep your cameras on. I know this is not a physical event, but maybe we can have just something similar. Also during the presentations, I ask you to stay muted. Of course, you can write your answers or your questions in the chat window here in Zoom. And then after the presentations, when we have the debate, of course, you can raise your Zoom hand, you can unmute yourself, and you can ask your question. Also, we can make this a little bit more fun. We've prepared this themed backgrounds for Zoom. Matej is going to put the link in the chat window, and you can upload them if you like. Now I'm happy to present our moderator, Dušan Lukić. He holds the title of the fastest moderator of UNI.MINDS Festival. Maybe you know him from his role as a Formula One commentator. Dušan is an expert in e-mobility and new forms of sustainable mobility, a long-time automotive journalist and editor who has tested several thousand different cars in his more than 20-year career. He tested his first electric car in the mid-90s, and since then he has been irresistibly attracted to this subject. When it comes to sustainable mobility, e-mobility, and digitalization of mobility, he is one of the leading experts in Slovenia. In 2019, he switched from journalism to create new concepts and services. Now he runs the new mobility project at Porsche Slovenia. Dušan, I'm so happy you could be with us here today, but before I give you the stage, I wanted to show you the results of the poll that I've opened in Huva a couple of days ago. The question is here: are you afraid that technology will make you dispensable or even redundant? Most of those who answered say no. What are your thoughts, Dušan?
Well, it's nice to have an audience that is not afraid of technology, which I would kind of expect of an audience of a conference like this. Yeah, thanks for the nice introduction. I'm very glad to be moderating this panel. I wanted to introduce myself shortly, but you did it perfectly, so no need to introduce myself anymore now. Maybe some of you will ask yourself, what is Porsche Slovenia, which is importer of cars, and we were always selling cars, doing in an area of new mobility. But yeah, what we've realized that maybe differentiates us from other similar companies in Slovenia is that the old model is basically that. So we have to switch to a newer model in which the mobility is only it has different agendas, and of course, if we're talking about that, we also have to talk about sustainability, energy, and everything else. So yeah, that's what we are doing, and that's what I'm doing there. So The topic of this panel, sustainable and community-driven cities and villages. What does that mean, actually? Well, for me, it means connected, smart communities that use technology that is, of course, based on human needs, not based on itself or existing just for itself, and based on the need to live a sustainable life. Because let's be honest, if we want to live nicely, we will have to live sustainably one way or another. And that includes basically everything, from our homes to our mobility needs, from our private life to companies to industrial production and so on. And when we are talking about sustainable communities, sustainable cities, sustainable villages, it's time to introduce our first panelist, Emilija Stojmenova Duh. She's a research fellow on Faculty of Electrical Engineering in University of Ljubljana and in the Lab for Telecommunications, Lab for Multimedia. And her topic is rural life and digitalization, so basically smart villages. But before we start, we will do one more thing. Before each presentation, we will have a short poll for our viewers. You will have a few seconds to answer the question, and then of course we will discuss it a little bit after the presentation is finished. So I'll ask for the first poll to appear, and it is of course a question of who will profit most from the digitalization of our life. So from the stuff we will be discussing today. And I don't mean the big companies. I mean, will it be better, or will it mean bigger steps forward for urban areas, rural areas, or maybe it will be both, but for each in its own way. So I will ask you to, give in your votes in the next few seconds. And then when we gather enough, we are almost, we got quite enough. So we'll have a few more seconds. And then after that, we will end our polling basically right now. And I will give then the word to Emilija to start her presentation. So Emilija, please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Dusan. Thank you as well for presenting me. So I won't lose time on that. I'm coming from the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, and we have started working with smart cities and smart villages almost a decade ago. So we have done quite a lot of work on that, and today I only want to share with you some of our findings. What are the villages of the future? So mostly we work with rural development, and several years ago we started working with smart villages. At the European Week of Regions and Cities, I was asked by the European Commission to present my vision for long-term development of rural Europe, and also what the villages of the future would look like. So in my opinion, it is very important that they have very good high-speed broadband coverage, then that they also have interoperable data platforms and data sets, efficient, intuitive, and use public digital services. Then what is very important is that there is digital literacy for all, so everyone that lives in the rural areas, regardless of the background, of the education, age, and so on and so on. Then that people will trust the digital technologies. Another very important thing, easily accessible and flexible funding. And just later today, I'm speaking with the Vice President of the European Commission, Ms. Dubravka Šuica, about that the funding must be flexible and accessible for the rural areas. And last but not least, efficient policies. So why rural in brackets? Because we need both policies for urban and rural areas. This is our long-term vision. But what really is like right now? So as I mentioned, we have been working a lot on the smart villages, and we have 3 pilots. So one pilot is consisted of 2 areas. That is why you're seeing here 4 pictures. We have pilots in the east of Slovenia, west of Slovenia, and the north of Slovenia, and we're covering dense rural areas, semi-dense rural areas, and also very dispersed rural areas. So I have mentioned the long-term vision, and I was speaking a lot about digital technologies, and also your question was asking about digitalization, so who will gain most? we would like to introduce digital technologies in the rural areas, but what really the situation is right now, you can see at the picture on the right side. So this is a typical view from a Slovenian village. We have elderly people living there. They're not aware about what digital technologies are. They don't know how to use digital technologies, and they don't know what digital technologies will bring to them. So that is why in our lab we have introduced a new it is called Local Heroes. So we are finding people that live in these rural areas. So they're very well aware of what is happening in the rural areas. They're very well connected with the rural ecosystem, and they're our messengers. So they speak in our name. They introduce to the rural people what is going on and how digital technologies can improve their life. So our definition of smart villages, of course, digital technologies are very, very important, but they're only the means to make the villages resilient, to make to bring the people back in the villages and to stay there. So this is our view of a smart village, a village where people live, where schools must build additional buildings because there will be young people there as well. And the people that live in the villages, we have a very good quality of life. That is very shortly from our side, and you can at our webpage, at our laboratory, and also the Digital Innovation Hub. Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Emilija. That was really interesting. Maybe first we could see the results of the poll that we made. We see that, yeah, a lot of people think that both will each in its own way profit from the digitalization, but on the others, some say urban areas will profit more. Now, Emilija, what do you think? Are the barriers to digitalization in rural areas that much bigger than in the cities, and that is the biggest problem? Or is the bigger problem the fact that the population is different, it's older, it's different type of people? What is the biggest problem for the rural areas not able to catch up with the urban areas when we come to digitalization and smart life?
The problem I would see is the investment. We have invested, and the European Commission, Slovenia, and so on, can invested so much more in the urban areas. So many times people see rural areas as the losers, but they're not the losers. We have just failed to invest in the rural areas and to use their potential for development. That is why we don't have digital infrastructure in the rural areas as much as in urban areas. Then we have not invested in the skills and competencies. The gap is in Slovenia especially is very large here. So, and I think these are the two most important issues. So we don't have digital infrastructure, we don't have people with digital skills, and there is not so much investment for companies, for private investments. It is so much easier to invest in urban areas because the return of investment is much higher. And in rural areas, they simply don't see return on investment. That is why we need public funding in rural areas to make this gap, narrow this gap.
You also mentioned local heroes. I understand their function, of course, but who actually are they? Are they, I don't know, school teachers? Are there some young people that are still living in these areas? Who is an average local hero?
There is no average local hero because they're very diverse. And I don't know if you could see in the picture, we have very young people, we have elder people, so also retired people, we have entrepreneurs, so it really doesn't matter. There is not one model fits all. But what is very important for us is that the local heroes are very well known in their local environment. So they're trusted people, also not the word, but they are respected. This is the word I was looking for. So they're very well respected. They are very well aware of the whole ecosystem. So they know who is talking to whom, what companies are existing there, how they work, what are the specifics. And then for us, it took us a long time to find the local heroes in each of the villages. So this was it took us a lot of effort for that, but once we have them, it is much easier to work with the whole community.
Thank you, Emilija, and of course stay with us. There will be more questions after we finish with all of these presentations. Now, smart communities, as you can see, are a topic that is really hot right now, and that is of course understandable. They are, it seems, our future, but I don't think we are prepared enough for this future yet. One of the problems I think we'll have to solve is the process itself of identifying what we need to do, which problems do we have, which tools do we have to solve this problem, and so on. Our next panelist will deal with that, but before, another quick poll. So when we are talking about all these solutions, services, and so on, it's a kind of a chicken and egg question. What do we need more? Do we just start developing the new smart services and just launch them, connected, unconnected? Or do we need to do some kind of a digital framework to incorporate and connect them, to have this stuff? I can see that this one will be kind of a one-sided poll, I think, because most of the people, at least now, have one opinion, but we'll see what the end result will be. And of course, we will see what our next panelist thinks about it, because he is one of the people that I think has thought about it the most. So we will slowly conclude our poll, and then I'll introduce Muhamed Turkanović. He's the assistant professor and deputy head of Information Systems Laboratory of Faculty for Electrical Engineering and Computer Science in Maribor, and his presentations deals basically also with the question that we had in our poll. So Muhamed, go ahead, please.
Thank you for your introduction. So I'm gonna try to explain slightly about the smart villages and the disruptive tech. So we are part of the Interreg Alpine Space Smart Villages, as Emilija is, and what we have done within this project is that we have thought about the need to say what is smart. Okay, before we say one village or one city smart, we had to define a dimension where we say, okay, you are probably smart in a dimension, and since one village can be smarter possibly in mobility or in environment, others can be smarter in other dimensions. So within this project, a 6-dimensional framework was designed where we have said these dimensions exist for smartness, environment, mobility, governance, people, economy, and living. So within the project, we went further on and then prepared, let's say, a poll, a questionnaire, which methodologically wants to actually get information from possible respondents who are representatives of villages, for example, or communities, and they then have to fill out a questionnaire, and this questionnaire helps them to actually see how smart they are and to get them to the knowledge where they can improve. And for example, here you see the results where these possible village representatives actually get the results. They see they are really smart or really good prepared for the smart living dimension and people dimension. However, they need to improve in the economy and mobility. So when they have to improve now in these two dimensions, they need some good practices. How can they improve? And this project tends to actually enable them to see these possible good practices. And the methodology exists in the case that we say now, okay, you're bad in mobility. Here are good practices of mobility in villages in different areas and in these test areas, which Emilija also talked about. And you get, for example, how the French village is actually really good in mobility. And then you see, maybe I can copy this good practice. However, for the thing that you are really excellent in, and this is the smart people, for example, the portal and the digital exchange platform that we have designed actually asks you that you provided this good practice, that you share how good you are with others. So then you follow either by providing your good practice with others, or you actually go one step further and use the toolbox, which enables you actually to go step further into using these good practices. And as you see, we have a already existing good practices list of villages and communities which show how good they are. And within, I want to represent one of these good practices that we are also part of as the University of Maribor in our laboratory. In the Pomurje, we have one good practice, and this is based on the smart living, where we say that we have a good practice of enabling a short food supply chain, which is facilitated with blockchain technology. So we have designed a solution where a short food supply chain can be facilitated with blockchain. So the customer at the end has more information and more vivid information and compliant information that the products, that goods that he buys, vegetables, that they are really from the farmer next door, and that they really came at that time and place to the distributor, etc. So this is one of the possible good practices which can then later on be also copied within other village communities in order to improve their smartness level. So in a short representation, this would be it for possible questions. Of course, I'm free to talk about more.
Thank you, Muhamed. Let's first see the results of our quick poll. I think they're quite predictable. Let's see them. Yeah, I mean, most of the people think that we should start to develop a framework first and then connect digital services. But I think, do you agree, or can we just start launching with services like you, for example, one of those that you described, and then see how to connect them between themselves?
Well, you have always this bottom-up or top-down approach, and in some, let's say, in some communities, this top-down approach is maybe more appropriate. Let's say in spaces where the governmental infrastructures are more supportive, and then you have this top-down approach where you have the framework, and then these governmental frameworks can also supplement and help possible service providers to include these digital services. However, when there is not so many governmental framework support, I think then this bottom-up approach is the only one that you have. In this case, the community with their digital services is possibly then pushing with these ideas that which can then later on be incorporated in a framework. Of course, it really depends on the community that you are part of.
Now, you've mentioned in this best practice that you showed that it's a blockchain-based solution. Do you think blockchain can be basically, I won't say a framework, but the connecting link between a lot of these services? Is it necessary, or is it just the thing you either choose or not to use?
It is something that you choose, or this is just one of the technology. It can be chosen of if this service needs these features of blockchain technology, then this technology can be used. And the European Union already works on European blockchain service infrastructure, which would on the European Union level enable an infrastructure for all the service providers who want to use this member state driven infrastructure of blockchain. So when there are cases, these will then be able to use this blockchain technology, which is also supported by European Union. But when the blockchain technology is not needed, of course, other technologies can be used, like data technologies like streaming, etc. So yeah.
Thank you, Muhamed. And of course, stay with us as long as you can, because I'm sure there will be questions after we finish with the presentation. So this was, two presentations that are, I won't say that they were based in theory, because they are both based on practical work, but they're kind of a pilot project, let's call it like that. And it's not like only the people from university, the researchers are working in this area of digital. Many companies are already working on different solutions. and services also that are part of what we can call smart communities. One of them is A1, which you probably know as one of the most important telcos in Slovenia and, of course, worldwide. But first, of course, we will start again with the short poll. So let's see it. So basically, the question is simple. How do you think that you are using the services that could be defined as part of the smart cities? How often do you use them? A lot, not a lot, never. That will be, I think, quite interesting to see what the people actually see as the services of a smart community. So we will wait a few seconds for the results to come in, and then we will move on. Okay, a few more votes, and then we can slowly move on. So, as I mentioned, A1, they are quite active in this area, and maybe it's nice to see what actually they are doing, because it's an area that is not only technologically quite demanding, it's also legally and organizationally demanding. So with us here is Marjana Senčar Srdič. She's head of IoT Technology and Innovations Department at A1, and I've seen her presentation before, and it's really, really interesting. So Marjana, please do go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll just start sharing. So I will start up with people for who we all work for. Who is a typical citizen to whom solutions should be tailored in the end? Population aging leads to a higher proportion of elderly, which generally means more people in a situation of economic dependency. There is a need for new services like daycare for people with dementia, new ways of transportation, activities for active age, meals at home, and similar. Financial accessibility of assistance to citizens is very important, and that should be a clear thing, since from history on, first settlements were established to give shelter to community of people living together. Furthermore, settlement of Slovenia is dispersed and uneven, and therefore needs adapted modes of future means of transportation. In order to avoid ownership of vehicles, extreme flexibility in car sharing models is needed. Villages and towns with less population and dispersed settlement emphasize the importance of development funds, which enable the development of settlements of all sizes, not just the bigger cities. Additionally, lately, a lot of measures were used by municipalities to mitigate the effects of COVID-19, like free parking, rent subsidy, and similar. Transparency and timely information for citizens are important for success of any smart city project. But is there a better or easier way to just gather information than on some web page with geolocation? Well, we believe so. By using applications citizens are used to. Citizens can attach a picture with location to a message about vandalism. They can ask in which part of the process one of their requests is, and similar. Municipalities, on the other hand, can send messages about planned power outages due to maintenance work, inform car owners who parked at the road that the snowplow is coming, and similar. And when we gather all the information from citizens, what are the types of solutions that have the most impact? If we add a layer of sensors to the structure of the city, this will collect data, and the results from this collected data can help the city to learn and adapt. On this basis, we can develop smart city applications that make our daily lives easier. Municipalities can only benefit from a centralized view, integrated view. Drivers spend an average of 17 hours a year searching for a parking space. Upgrade of transport strategies and infrastructure projects as smart and sustainable mobility should be in focus of every municipality. Also, opening a city to people by withdrawing motorized traffic from the city center is part of ensuring a high quality of living. Environmental monitoring with monitoring stations gives municipalities a good information where the sources of pollution are. Stations can be installed in a stationary position or on moving vehicles. Maybe just a little bit information about the company where I come from. Slovenia is second largest telecommunication operator in Slovenia, and it's also part of A1 Telekom Austria Group. That is a European unit of America Movil, one of the largest wireless operators in the world, and that brings scalability and pool of experts with a lot of experience on projects worldwide. One of the solutions that we are proud of is in our portfolio is ParkMeWise parking solution with integrated chatbots, a global innovation. We believe in power of ecosystem, and we are certain that it's not enough to be only an infrastructure provider. A1 Slovenia deploys a series of smart city solutions, and we put a lot of our focus in advanced data analytics. One of our solutions is analyzing anonymized and aggregated data from our network and represents a means to understanding the dynamics of migration within an individual municipality, as well as between municipalities, and provides insights needed to protection and rescue, public transport optimization, traffic flows, tourism, and similar. So how can we, as one of many companies active in this space, help cities and municipalities and the citizens in the end? We can help municipalities identify processes that are needed for enabling better solutions and value. We can bring experience from projects for cities of all sizes around the world, and connected to my last slide, we can help communities to start proper communication with their citizens. And that is key for any successful implementation, because this is the essential thing that we are all trying to work on. Thank you.
Dusan, you are muted.
Yes.
You're muted.
We can see in the result of the poll that that actually, you know, it is obvious from your presentation there are a lot of these digital services already deployed in many urban areas. But from this poll, we can see that, let's see, about half of the people probably don't even realize how many of them are already running and what they are doing. Do you think is it good or bad that people actually don't know that they're using it and how much they're using it?
It all starts with the sole definition what the smart application even is now, because these definitions are very broad. So I guess some of the participants don't even realize that this is part of the smart city solution. In the end, all the upgrades that we are seeing lately in our cities with using electrical bikes and similar new sustainable ways of transport, maybe we sometimes forget that this is also part of this discussion.
Okay, thank you, Marjana. And now we will move on, of course, stay with us. Now, what do all this presentation that we've seen so far have in common? Of course, they have in common the digitalization, that's what we're talking about, but they also have in common people. Because digitalization is in the end for the people. It is not, you know, there just for itself. So it should adapt to people. And when we're talking about digitalization and adapting to people, one of the things that spring to mind is, for example, autonomous cars, and that they inevitably, because they are part of bigger mobility solution, this autonomous, not just cars, let's call them vehicles, because they can be taxis, they can be buses, they can be flying things. They will be a big and integral part of our smart community. So let's jump to a quick poll now. For the cars, because they are most developed right now, should their widespread use be allowed already in the state that they are now? Because one theory says yes, because on average they are a bit safer, and the other says no, because people just don't want to see, you know, AI making decisions instead of themselves until it's really 100% safe. So this will be an interesting feedback. And why am I asking? Why is this poll about autonomous cars? It's quite easy. We will slowly finish it. Because our next presenter, Anya Cergolj Kebler, she's from Cergolj Insurance Company, and she works in an area of traffic safety and digitalization. We do know that most of the traffic accidents happen within populated areas, within communities, and as long as we don't have 100% sure AI that will do 100% of drives, it is important and will be important not only to research what causes the accidents, which of course are mostly caused by human factor, but also why drivers are acting as they are and consequently causing accidents. And that is one of the things that Anna is working on. So Anna, please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you. So first of all, working for insurance company, I'm over and over again faced with the fact that a lot of people and communities do not feel that they have any common goals with their insurance company, and can we prove that wrong? And safer communities be our common and achievable goal. Since this is mostly smaller communities in Slovenia, it's also a challenge. Can we use data and digital tools to achieve it? So car accidents directly affect insurance business through claims. So road safety is a part and has to be a part of our core business. Even the World Bank stated that insurances have an important role in road safety, since we provide a direct motivation for the driver to drive safely, premium policies. So we hacked this one. This is our application Drive. It tracks your driving and offers a discount on premium for safe drivers. And it's still a unicorn in Europe. So we have the motivation part, but what if the driver can't and don't know how to be safer? Can we help with this as an insurance company, and how? As you mentioned, Dusan, more than 60% of all accidents occur in local communities. So this was our focus. We wanted to empower the communities to become safer. We started collaborating with researchers and tech companies. Together, we looked at the places where most accidents occur, and we provided intelligent road systems that communicate with the driver in real time. And we kept measuring all the time. We included schools, local polices, local governments. So then there's the driver. We wanted to really get to know the driver, his DNA. So tech company Nervtech, who is also here with us today, helped us with advanced driving simulator. We took it on the road in 10 cities, and we put the drivers through different critical situations. We found that only 1 in 3 drivers would be able to have the driving license again. And this was a warning that we had to respond to. So we switched from digital environment to real roads. We invited long-time drivers to retake the driving license with experienced driving instructors. And this was an amazing experience. Even if only 1 in 4 would pass the test again, this was really not the main purpose. It was to empower them to master the roads again. And especially with seniors, this means that they can maintain their autonomy, their mobility longer, and this really affects the quality of their lives. And we also founded a web portal that tries to teach the rules of regulations of the roads in a fun, easy way. So this is our community. And now for the results. This is what we achieved. We keep measuring, and we share all of our data with municipalities, with local police, so they can use it as a tool for their measures in their local communities. We're also very happy about the fact that the drivers who drive with our application have 12% less loss events. So they are in fact safer drivers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was interesting insight of other things that insurance companies do, not just, processing claims and making new policies. Now, if we look at the poll result, it's majority, let's say 2/3 of the people still don't believe the autonomous driving technology. What do you think? Because I mean, we know that autonomous cars will have influence on insurance business, because if they're 100% safe, there is no possibility of accidents, there is no insurance needed, so there is less business for you. So what do you think about autonomous driving now and in the future?
Well, I think we all thought in the past it's going to be a highway, electricity, sharing economy, self-driving. But we see now there are many risks and obstacles. So for now, as you mentioned, it's absolutely, we are not there where this could be safe. But, from the perspective of an insurance, we actually don't know how the mobility will develop. And it's not even our task. Our task is to really monitor, to research, to get to know, and ensure that however complex and different mobility will be, we will be able to ensure it. So that's our research, and that's why we're connected with researchers and the industry, and making sure this is our role that we fulfill.
Thank you, Anna. And we move on. What I think no one here doubts is that in the end, traffic and mobility, when we are talking about this part of the living, will transform into something completely autonomous. It won't be it won't be products anymore. It will be a service. So completely autonomous, flexible, multimodal service. Driving, flying, just guiding you around, walking. It's just a question of time. And our next poll connects to that. So for this to happen, the time is not only thing we need. We also need legislation, education. So, and for some time, the autonomous driving and normal drivers will have to coexist on the roads. And then there is a question: who will have to adopt? Who should adopt, or who technically can adopt? Do we expect that AI will have to learn every nuance of human behavior and adapt to it, or will humans be forced to learn to coexist with AI on the road? Or one of the possible answers is it should be separate. We need separate roads. Okay, so I think the votes are coming in quite nicely. So a few more seconds, and then we will slowly end this poll. As you can see, and as the results it shows, it is a complex area, and right now it consumes a big amount of energy, of smart brains of researchers, and money of the different investors. And one of those brains belonged to Professor Jaka Sodnik from Faculty of Electrical Engineering. He's working in the Lab of Information Technologies and knows a lot about AI driving, among other things. Right, Jaka?
Yeah, thank you very much for this kind introduction. Yes, the autonomous vehicles are the core of our research, and so to talk briefly about self-driving cars, just like in all other fields of industry, the automation is gaining importance, and we can expect that also in automotive domain, cars being at least partially automated, this is the next big thing. So today it's probably almost impossible to buy a new car without at least a partial automation. So we're talking about systems such as lane keeping system, adaptive cruise control, emergency braking, even automated parking, and so on. And when these features become powerful enough to completely take over the driving task from the driver, we can start talking about autonomous vehicles in totally. So of course, there are many challenges on this path. This is a very complex task that needs to be solved. Since we are eliminating human as the driver in vehicles, of course, we are eliminating a lot of human capabilities. We're talking about human senses, which needs to be substituted with some kind of sensors to actually perceive the environment, to see what's going on around the vehicle. We're also eliminating human brain. That's even more important. And you already mentioned artificial intelligence before. So obviously this is the one of the key technologies that will enable this kind of self-driving, especially machine learning, because these cars they will not be able to program them completely in advance to be able to cope with all this changing environments. So they will need to learn on the go and adapt to new things. And they will need to talk to each other just like human. They will need to communicate. They will need to communicate with infrastructure and so on. And just like human driver before can actually start driving in real world, we need to get a driving license. So for the self-driving cars, we're expecting something similar to happen. There will need to be a series of tests which will need to be taken and passed before such car can actually be fully deployed to live traffic. And nevertheless, the human factor. So already in the poll that you presented before, we know that in the next at least 50 years, there will be coexistence of human drivers and self-driving cars. So they will need to interact with each other. They will need to learn from each other, and they will need to share the roads. That's the fact. But not just other cars. There are also other vulnerable users, just as like pedestrians, cyclists, scooters, and so on. They will also coexist because they are important, I would say, block of future mobility. And the self-driving cars will also need to cope with this kind of road users. And nevertheless, you can imagine that if you build a self-driving car, you program some algorithms to drive it, it's not going to be the same in US compared, for example, to Rome or Greece or, I don't know, even Mumbai. So it's impossible for the same algorithm to drive in all those different environments. There are so many differences in driving cultures and even driving rules that this will need to be incorporated into vehicles somehow. And this is also the topic that we are trying to address also with our research. So we recently completed a Slovenia national project, which was called Neurophysiological and Cognitive Profiling of Driving Skills. This was done together with University of Maribor, their psychology department, and Zavarovalnica Triglav, which we heard before about, and also NervTech, a Slovenian startup company working a lot in this domain. So what we developed, basically, it's a driving simulator, which is used as a tool. So actually you put a driver in this driving simulator, you face him or her with a bunch of different traffic situations, even critical situations and some edge cases. And then at the end, the system records the behavior, also some physiological responses, for example, such as eye tracking and sweating, so galvanic skin response, temperature, and so on. And at the end, the system comes up with the score. You actually get your personal driving score, and you get some information of what kind of a driver you are. So this is the core of this system and the result of this project, which is now also used by Zavarovalnica Triglav, so the Triglav insurance company, to screen young drivers. They can do these tests, they can be educated, and they can get some feedback at the end. So by doing these tests with a lot of population, with a lot of different drivers, not just in Slovenia, also in Europe and in the world, we collected a lot of data about the driving behavior. And this data is now used to actually make digital representatives of specific drivers. So we are making some kind of an avatars or digital clones which represent a specific driver. So it's an AI system, but it mimics human behavior. And we can put those drivers back into the simulation. And now a new autonomous vehicle, which needs to be tested, can actually be put in this simulation, and it can face this, let's say, digital human drivers. So it's a really realistic and live environment when AVs can be trained against real humans. Of course, coming from different regions, different cultures, and so on. This is the core. So I'd be happy to give more information later on when you have some Q&A sessions, but I think my 3 little bit more minutes are up for now. So thanks.
Thank you, Jaka. Also, our poll results show that people mostly understand that, of course, this will be a very, very flexible thing. But one of the interesting things you mentioned is that you think that the AI will have to do some kind of a driver's test, pass it before it can be deployed on the road as an autonomous vehicle. But on the other side, we have, companies like Tesla that basically already claim they have autonomous driving. They have just deployed it without any driver's test. They do updates to it without any homologation, just do it over the air. The legal framework here is kind of lacking, don't you think?
Yes, I completely agree. The legal way here, the legislation and validation, it's lacking behind, especially for Slovenia. I'm sorry to bring this up, but Slovenia, it's probably the only country in Europe, or one of the last countries, which still doesn't have any kind of legislation for this kind of in this field. So we cannot perform any tests on public roads. We cannot even declare that we want to make a test here. So we're really lacking behind. As you know, for example, Austria and Hungary, because Slovenia approximately 2 years ago, or even 3 now, they signed this trilateral agreement. We will do some tests and some experimenting together with Austria and Hungary. And those 2 countries are very active, but Slovenia, we're still lacking here. But since you mentioned AI, of course, AI is just the top of this mountain. Of course, there are a lot of different pieces of technology in these cars will needs to be tested. I mentioned sensors before. So there's a lot of tests just dedicated to evaluate these sensors. There are some tests on some different portions of the cars. And of course, the AI is just the top of this mountain, but of course, the ultimate top, because this is what will actually drive these systems and make all the important decisions.
Thank you, Jaka. It's time to move on, of course, to our next presentation. We've been talking now this past few minutes about autonomous, non-autonomous vehicles. Whatever the brains that drive them, they need the propulsion system, the cars, I mean, not the brains. And we've been used to in our lives to internal combustion engines, be it gasoline, be it diesel, but now it seems that the battery-powered electric vehicles are the way forward. So let's see the poll. The question is, are the battery electric vehicles new normal? Is this a thing that we will have to get used to it and that's it? Or, you know, maybe yes to electricity as a power for the engine, but not stored in batteries. Or maybe, you know, we can just make the internal combustion engines clean enough, or is clean enough compared to many other things on the earth right now, and we just need to stop wasting money for subsidies and research and so on. We'll see about these results, and the votes are coming in. About half of you voted already, so yeah, start clicking. And while you finish your clicking, I will introduce our next speaker. Well, from what we can see from this poll quickly, and from what I think that the thinking is right now, is that it's actually long-term very hard to predict which technology will prevail. I mean, in short-term, the batteries seem to have a big advantage, but long-term, we'll see. And who can answer us? Who can answer a question like that? Well, our next panelist, Vice Dean for Research and International Relations and Head of Laboratory for Internal Combustion Engines and Electromobility. So both things on the faculty for Mechanical Engineering here in Ljubljana, Tomaž Katrašnik, he can do that. So, Tomaž, how do we find those answers?
I will first do a presentation and then we go further. So do you see my screen just to check it? No, not yet.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. So just a second, share.
Yeah. Now it should work. Yes.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. So I don't have a crystal ball, so to start off with this. So, but I will try to say a few words. So, and how this, let's say, vehicle propulsion system, how do they connect to villages? So it's kind of environmental impact. And if we look now to the Green Deal, so expectedly, Green Deal addresses climate ambitions, which is kind of well-known story. But we have now clearly exposed a zero pollution ambient for a toxic-free environment. And this poses a significant challenge on all combustion-related devices, certainly on internal combustion engines, but please do not forget, now in winter, the large emissions mainly do not necessarily come from internal combustion engine. So there is a long way in stationary combustion that we have to do to really reach this target. But today I will talk just about the vehicles, just to open the box. And let's say, what is next to come? So certainly we want to significantly reduce CO2 emissions. and then comes renewable energy directives. And all these four significantly pave the way where we will go. So this one is not yet fully defined, but if we clearly go here to full zero, this means that there will be a paradigm shift. And this is at least what now currently EU is demanding from the research and the industry, and they want really strong shift towards battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles, be fuel cell as a replacement of internal combustion engine, where you store the energy in hydrogen and then produce electricity. And certainly all these things will have to be optimized. A lot of them needs to be developed newly, or redeveloped, or rethink, or readapted. So, and all this imposes a lot of significant challenges, and certainly not only we, but let's say entire community here search a solution in virtual solutions, and this is also what I will be talking at, because we try to contribute to this. So, and I will be talking about multi-scale, multi-domain mathematical models that can reduce the development time and costs of future powertrains, representing one of the enablers of the front loading in the development process. And if we now go into the development process, why it's so important. So here we have targets, requirement specifications, and here we have a vehicle. And we have to run many runs around this V process in order to get good products. And certainly, you might imagine if we have scalable models, if we do not do many iterations, we end up with better, cheaper products in shorter development time. And let's say what needs to be tackled. Below, we have really detailed level where we have to, let's say, if this is fuel cell, we have to dig with degradation phenomena. So how, let's say, platinum particles agglomerate and all these things. Then we have, a component level, and above we have a system level. And system level then nicely couples also to controls that we have in the vehicles. And let's say how now we can this nice V process transform in how simulation model looks like. We are addressing multi-domain models. So here's a topology of a vehicle, and where we see now these domains. Here is electrochemical, here is fuel cell and the battery. And there is electrical, and there is mechanical, there is thermal, and there is control. But this is kind of well known. We have some characteristics of the fuel cell, but we go deeper and we dig into multi-scale, which means when I do first assessment, I have here a very simple model. But if I go further, I really dig into components and I dig to very basic phenomena. Why? Because this component characteristic importantly influence performances, and degradation characteristics, they determine the, let's say, costs, but also safety and durability. And so important is to tackle the entire causal chain with the aim of approaching engineering limits with higher certainty and contributing to the first time right approach. Similar could be said for batteries. This could be a very simple model, or we can dig into it, into electrochemical cells. So this is cathode, anode. We can search for intracell parameters, let's say predict degradation. This is so-called solid electrolyte interface. So why it's so important? Because in cells with liquid electrolytes that we have now, decreases performance, can contribute to heat generation, and at the end, it could lead to outbreak of a thermal runaway, which is quite a severe issue. Picture is complex because processes are complex, and causal chain is complex, and thus we really want to come from global vehicle parameters all down to safety assessment in a coupled way. Furthermore, these models can be further simplified and used in controller models, but further simplified means in a consistent manner that we have kind of traceability of models in the development process. And why this is important? Because if we have better monitoring tools, we have enhanced performance, we have better longer lifetime, and thus safety. And certainly we are not the only ones that work there. This is quite a challenge, but we really try to contribute with our innovative models that are really widely used around. So thank you for your attention. So I have digged now a bit in the details, but let's say, I think we will now have in the discussion the opportunity to talk what are the challenges and what might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomaž. Yeah, I mean, it was an in-depth discussion, but it showed presentation, but it showed one thing, that there is a lot of work in developing. And on the other side, we have policies, we have politicians that set policies, and what the history has taught us, that usually they tend to choose in advance the technology that they want to see, like Europe decided years ago to push diesel vehicles over gasoline. And then whatever you do in research, actually, if it fits their persuasion, it's okay. Otherwise, it becomes kind of, I won't say irrelevant, but hidden, and if it doesn't fit their agenda, it's not okay. Do you agree?
Yeah, let's say I'm right now, there is a parallel meeting going on powertrain roadmap. And exactly this is the way. So currently EU politically decided not to publicly fund anything related to ICEs. So this is set. So this does not mean that they will not be developed. This does not mean that they will not be used. But let's say exactly this is a strong push. If we really want to go for, let's say, clean cities, not the entire world, because let's say maybe go first, we have to divide. There are CO2 emissions, which are a global problem, but are not toxic on short range. But you have then particle emissions, NOx emissions, total hydrocarbons, and others. And if you really want to ban them, so also very clean vehicles do emit some amount of them. But currently, I do not say we will not go to fully clean cities. I should say this is pure vision. It should be that way. But it's really not the way that you will replace your most modern Euro 6 car and you will still have a, let's say, heating on solid or liquid fuels, because this is without any after treatment. So meaning, besides tackling this really holistically, this will not work. So in mobility sector, the push is extremely strong and we really want to go away from it. But I don't know what we will be able to do in stationary sector, because if we will not clean up the stationary sector, just changing the vehicles will cost a lot of cost and it will not bring us to the end result. But certainly we have to push it, and I think vision is certainly zero emission. When? I cannot say. At which cost? I have no clue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Katrašnik. And now we move on to our last presentation, and it is closely connected to previous one in the way that it deals with the hydrogen propulsion. So maybe we could go to the next poll. Sometimes we hear an opinion, especially from those that are really into battery electric vehicles, that hydrogen is just not viable for cars. That is basically just a technology that the old energy companies, not the energy companies, the fuel companies are pushing to somehow sustain their mode of operation with fueling stations, quick stops, and so on. And the others say no. Basically, this is a good idea because batteries take too long to charge, and so on and so on. So let's see what your vote is on that. Okay, and I think the poll. Oh yeah, now the poll is reopened. We closed it a little bit too soon, so you can start voting again, please. So we have some results for the end here, and while this is going on, of course, we will not be able to decide here today what is better, batteries or hydrogen, or maybe something else. But one thing is clear: this fuel cell technology is sexy enough, especially also compared to batteries, to attract many people to discuss cleaner transport that maybe wouldn't even think about it. And here with us today we have Associate Professor Dr. Matjaž Knez from Faculty of Logistics of University of Maribor, and he has a lot of experience of connecting people to debates about clean transport. So Matjaž, please do go ahead.
Yes, good morning to everyone. So I hope that we hear each other clearly. I believe that you're all familiar with the Green Deal, right? So how to get there? Today I would like to present you an example of how we already approach the implementation of the Green Deal. And I would like to present you an ongoing program where Faculty of Logistics from University of Maribor, together with the Slovenian company Cubes Technologies, put on the market a unique educational program for children, which is actually based on play, based on concept, learning by doing. Professor Paul Atkins from the UK, the eminence in the field of renewable energy sources, said to us when we met back last year that clean transport is a fundamental part of the shift towards a sustainable city, and linking renewables to clean transport is a key task for decision makers. So in our team, we believe that better integration of the energy system is really necessary to achieve a cost-effective decarbonization of the European Union economies. And it will also build a more flexible, more decentralized and digital energy system in which consumers will be or are empowered to make their own energy and transportation choices, right? So this, however, will only be able to happen with educated and technologically literate residents, also decision makers. So therefore, we prepared and launched H2Student program, the first free educational competition program which we implemented this year in Slovenia and Croatia. Our mission is to bring children closer to new technologies in transport related to hydrogen technologies, and to inspire them to study and work in the field of hydrogen. So our main task is competence development. I'm really pleased to say that during our events, all kids were actually playing with Legos. Can you imagine that? They built their first hydrogen powered cart, and these were actually for them the first experiences with hydrogen. And in short, I can say that they got their first hydrogen competencies. And we know that in Europe, we don't have many competencies in hydrogen. In the first year, I'm really happy to say that more than 1,000 kids were involved in this program, and we just started. And I'm also pleased that we were also proclaimed for the best national promotional project of the year 2020 in Slovenia on energy efficiency and renewable energy sources category. In this ongoing year, we would like to spread our program, but we will see how the corona will be with us or not. We would like to include or involve more students, and in the end of January we are already organizing conference which is called Hydrogen Ecosystem of Slovenia, with top eminent speakers from the field of hydrogen from all over. So our plan for the future, for the H2Student team, is to become exclusive educational partner at the Zero Emission Mobility Corridor Slovenia project, which is led by Cubus company, where we would like to promote hydrogen and build hydrogen competencies and help Slovenia to build competitive hydrogen ecosystem of Slovenia. I will come to the end, but just maybe a few words more. We think that linking renewable sources with transport is essential path for successful circular economy. And we believe that choice for clean transport is choice for the clean future. So that is why our program H2Student is here. Our mission and job today and for the future is to educate young people, to develop new competencies of young people and make the future cleaner and greener, just like the goals of the Green Deal are. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Matjaž. Maybe we can see the result of the poll first, and then I have a. Okay, as you can see, is it's quite interesting result. So people here do believe in fuel cells. So yeah, your research, your work is important in that case. Well, I have a question for you. First, you were talking about educating pupils, students, so young people. What about adults? What about those people that are basically deciding, voting with their wallets? Who educates those, and who sets the rules? Who sets the tone of the education? The politics?
Yeah, we know that everything is about the politics, right? But also the people who do the politics are also the fathers and mothers, you know, and they have children. So that's why we think that our approach, when we start doing this actually game to show them what hydrogen is, And then those parents who are actually the politicians are following what their kids do. I think that we can affect this policy through the kids, you see, and this is actually our approach. So, but we know that in many countries, they're putting a lot of efforts in the new regulation, new policy. So I think that the game is changing. And I think that in a few years, the hydrogen also in the politics will become the important issue. And I think it's already becoming. So if I answered.
Yeah, thank you, Matjaž. Okay, so it's probably not the last question for you, because now we have come to the end of our presentations. I hope that all our presenters are still here with us, and please, could you switch on your cameras? Now, you, the viewers, the listeners, have a chance to ask questions. You can just raise your hand and we will switch you on, or you can type your question into the chat window. We have about 15 minutes, so first come, first serve basis. So whoever is the first to ask questions, do please go ahead. Let's see if we have any questions. Otherwise, while you're still typing the questions, maybe I can start with one, and it's one for Emilija. I'm going a little bit to the beginning. You were talking about community-driven cities and villages, but we could also say that they should be technology or digitalization-driven. Or is digitalization, in your eyes, just a tool so they can be more community-driven?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question, but I would not say that they should be digital driven. I think it must be community driven. So as I already mentioned earlier, it is very important that technology is not the goal, but is only the mean. When we are speaking about innovation in smart cities and smart villages, we are speaking about not only open innovation and digital innovation, but most importantly about social innovation. And especially if we're speaking about sustainable cities and villages. So I would go for community driven.
Okay, let's see if we have any more. Taya, do we have any questions from our public or not?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So people are obviously thinking about all of this. Then maybe a question for Marjana, because it connects closely to these connected communities. Now we know that basically our smartphones and mobile phones have become a center of our digital life. I mean, whatever manufacturers of other devices might think, I think the fact is that we are centered around mobile device. So does that actually that mean that the telcos that are basically pushing this technology in the end will become the center companies of our lives? Because we used to be, grouped around who provides our power, who fuels our cars. Will now everything be basically connected to telcos?
Yeah, it seems so. But directly connected to this, now we all know that license spectrum, radio license spectrum, is a limited natural resource, and the impact of regulators and states themselves is huge in this space. With new technologies coming, the 5G that already has such a bad reputation before we even enrolled it in Slovenia properly. On one side, public wants more and more data to be transferred. On the other hand, they are not aware of limitations current technologies are coming to inevitably. So all these things must be act hand in hand. So it's not just a huge investment, it's also the impact of state and regulator that enables us to provide the end users with the best solutions in the end. So these are all important topics that should go hand in hand to enable future and current services also.
Okay. Jaka, one thing that we started as a small debate after the end of your presentation about autonomous driving. You said that AI will have to be tested and so on, and we went into this thing that some companies already say that it is developed. What is the true actually? We have companies that say AI is, autonomous driving is here, is developed, we can use it now, and we have other companies that say it's tens of years ago if we're talking about 100% autonomous driving that could transform basically our communities. So where are we actually? How far away is it?
It's a good question. Yeah. What mostly we can see here is this big difference between, I would say, old and conservative players in this field. So car companies like Volkswagen, Volvo, and so on. We don't hear any accidents about these cars, for example. We hear about, you mentioned Tesla, Uber, and all these new players which actually are not coming primarily from the automotive domain. These are actually more computer companies or with more computer background. And I think they're just pushing things a little bit too fast. So they are making public tests. They are actually, they put these cars on the streets, and they're why we hear about the accidents from that domain. So, but even this, as I mentioned, the conservative players, they are not lacking behind in terms of technology. They're just being more cautious what they do and what they announce. So they're doing this really slowly, step by step. But to be completely honest, the full autonomous driving, so-called level 5, that means that we don't need any kind of intervention from human. This is probably not possible at all. I mean, not everywhere at all. It will be this. It will be gradually introduced in some limited environments. For example, I'm pretty sure that driving on highway or driving in some specific regions, it will be possible, completely autonomous, but not totally everywhere. So it's being introduced slowly.
Okay, and we have also a question from public over the chat from Simona, and she says it's a kind of a known question for you, Jaka, I'm sure. The worst case scenario. So how does the research tackle this question when it comes to unavoidable crash? Who will be saved? Who will not be saved? But I think that's a kind of a question that is not actually a question, because when you come to autonomous driving, it should happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, of course, that it never comes to this question, but this is a very interesting academic debate, and everybody talks about this, what could happen if the vehicle needs to make a decision and so on. And I've heard about some really crazy proposals about this. For example, there are some groups. We talked briefly with a group from Germany who actually did a test how to answer this question, and they make some kind of a virtual environment when they put people in self-driving car which crashes in the end, and they have 1 or 2 seconds to press the button what they would do in this situation, who would kill, for example, who would they kill. And then based on these results, they make an algorithm which decides what is the value of life, for example. And they made these crazy combinations of, I don't know, young people, old people, combinations of females and children and so on. But as I said, this is just this is nice academic debate. But I think at the end, this question should not be basically asked at all. This is the idea of autonomous vehicles.
So just a note for all of you panelists, if you have some reply to anything you hear, that just jump in and tell us your opinion. But when we are just talking about mistakes not being made by autonomous vehicles and being made by drivers, then maybe a quick question for Anna, because your research shows that most drivers do not even realize that they are making more or less dangerous mistakes. So should the technology, you think, be used to just correct those mistakes automatically, like the assistance systems of the car, or should it also or predominantly be used to teach drivers how to recognize and avoid mistakes in the first place?
Both. And I think both is happening right now, and it's not a matter of 5 years, it's a matter probably of some decades. So as we are monitoring how the different correction systems influence the losses, the damages, which is really interesting for us to see if cars that have more systems, more helps, have less losses, and the nature of their losses, of their accidents. Also, we are very intensely working on the driver. So it's still the person, the driver is still the one that will make decisions and that will have the influence. So, you know, maybe we can say in 50 years there will be no car accidents, but until now, 102 people died last year on the roads here, and it's too much. And I think looking at the future is great, and we have to put a lot of effort in this, but we are here now still in local communities, small environments, and there's a lot to be done here also.
And another maybe interesting question, maybe for Muhamed, is we are gathering a lot of data. I mean, in research like that, in using the services that we develop, it's a huge amount of data. And of course, there are questions of privacy, and there are questions of what do we do with this data? How do we use it? How can we use it? If Muhamed is still with us, actually.
Muhamed already left.
He already left. Yeah, he said that maybe he would have to leave early, so maybe we'll leave this question for later. And then, of course, Matjaž and Tomaž, you were both talking about a little bit about propulsion, about hydrogen, about batteries, about how to decide and develop. And on one side we have, for example, Matjaž, who is working more of on an education side. On the other side, there is the pure research side. How will we basically present these things to people? Because right now they are deciding and having their opinions made on kind of an incomplete results, because the topics are usually just too let's call it too complicated to understand for them. Because if you saw Tomaž's presentation, this is really a complicated thing. So how can we make it everything easier to understand, and how can we present it easier, and how can we cycle it faster and therefore making it easier to adapt for people?
Yeah, the thing is that's why we asked ourselves how do we start this transmission or this learning process, and that's why we decided that this audience, like pupils or students in high schools, are there at this moment when the technology is in this let's say stage, is the right population for us to start. So because we know that these pupils, let's say in a few years, they will be in the market, they will be also the decision makers, and they will be also the users of these new technologies. And I can explain from my experience, because when we started with launching of this program, I heard so many things. Hydrogen, this is a bomb, this is dangerous, right? But now I can explain you that when children were actually playing with Legos, they built their own hydrogen car with this small unit of energy, which is included in the Lego car. They're actually smiling, and they see that this is not the bomb. This is nothing dangerous, you see. So maybe through this play, through this building these competencies, this kind of new experience for them, and maybe in a few years they will be familiar with this technology, and suddenly, or they will start using it immediately, you know.
Agree. Maybe also a comment from my side. So I think the problem is, as said, I think extremely complex, and all the answers are not known at all, because let's say we should ask ourselves why we are doing this. So kind of it's sustainable and it's environmental. So we have there many challenges. We have greenhouse gas emissions, we have toxic emissions, but at the end, we also have to source some materials. All things need to be transported, produced. We should have sufficient production capabilities. So it's about building new factories. It's about the skills, certainly, as was now addressed. And I think all this then goes not just looking at the vehicles. This is in our world called tank to wheel. It goes from well to will. It's where we source at least the energy, but it goes even further. It goes to life cycle assessment. It goes about fully sourcing materials, producing it, recycling it. And certainly this is extremely complex. And I do teach, but I do not, let's say, make and or hope at least that some people will be ever capable of understanding everything. But at the end, things should boil down to very simple things. It should be cleaner, it should be cheaper, it should be more reliable, and it should be safe. And if we achieve this, then it's very simple to convince. But here I'm a bit skeptical if we would be able to achieve all these KPIs. I think clean could be, but we should do a lot. But with cheaper, it will be hard. But again, here it's about how big the box is. Certainly vehicles might be more expensive, but if we are able to make this up in these new energy systems, and if we consider all indirect costs, so the system then really gets extremely big because it goes down to, let's say, sick people, it goes down to a long-term environmental impact. This is also not yet fully uniquely calculated, as you might read in news. And let's say this, if we present this in a clear manner, it's a challenge. We have to do a lot of technical stuff before, then we might succeed. But I think this transition period will be hard, challenging. And the problem is that in current situation, every nation has to survive it on its own. And you have to know where to go. You have to have the vision. You have to have things calculated. And this is quite demanding also for Slovenia.
And maybe if I can continue to add something to Tomaž, I really agree with that. But maybe something the same is happening or was happening with the electric vehicles, right? I remember I started learning about and doing some researches maybe 10 years ago in the field of electric vehicles. But now we can see that after all these years, electric vehicles are still not, let's say, all over around us. You see, so maybe when we are speaking about the hydrogen as a new technology, and we are really on the beginning, so we need to. We must not do the same mistakes like we have done when we were implementing electric vehicles. So now we are in this phase when we put a lot of forces in education to give them, as Tomaž said, as much as we can, so that they will be able to understand, and maybe in a few years they will be able to decide. And of course, yes, I agree, price is still the problem of these new technologies.
Okay, thank you both. Heard quite a lot of interesting things, answered quite a lot of interesting questions. What I would, see as an end product of this discussion is that, yeah, of course, we do need smart, connected communities. We do need all the technologies that enable them, be it propulsion technologies, communication technologies, everything else. But what we do need to be careful about is, of course, first not to make them, self-sufficient, not self-sufficient, just, the reason for themselves. We have to be really sure that we are building an ecosystem that can be sustainable and that pushes sustainability and not just development on the sake of development. And of course, that we really have to listen to the people, analyze what they say, and of course, educate them where needed, and to make sure that whoever does that does it because it is needed and not because they want to push some kind of their agenda, usually a political agenda. I think that's a nice takeaway from today's presentations. Thank you, everybody. And I will, Teja, maybe you can take over from here.
Thank you, Dusan. I'll just share my screen here. Thank you all for joining us today. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we can continue this discussion in Uhuva. I will create a discussion topic for us named after this parallel session, and we can continue this debate. You can just scan the QR code, or Matej is going to put a link directly to Uhuva and how to download it in the chat window. We hope you enjoyed this event. Your opinion matters to us, so please give us your feedback. There is a direct link into who are rating. Matej is going to put the link here as well. And don't forget, our festival isn't over yet. We still have 2 sessions to go, one on Monday at 2 p.m., Google Workshop for Students, Imposter Syndrome, and the other is on Tuesday at 9 a.m. It's going to be a panel, Future Society is going to be in Slovenian language. So please, thank you again for joining us. Take care, keep an open mind, and see you again at our next event. Bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.